Very good. Welcome, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari, and I'm a contractor under the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging and the North Central Texas Aging and Disability Resource Center, or ADRC, both of which are under the umbrella of the North Central Texas Council of Governments in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. We are thrilled to have our neighbor from Fort Worth and our friend from the James L. West Center. Holly Lowe is here to talk about Hospice 101, everything you ever wanted to know, but we're afraid to ask. But today is the day you don't want to be afraid. Today is the day to ask. And don't be embarrassed. There is no such thing as a stupid question. So please ask. But I do ask that if you have questions for Holly, if you'd please put them in the Q&A. It just takes a long time to try to filter through the chat because the chat is for remarks and that kind of thing. But please put questions, and only questions for the speaker, or if you have something for me, please put those in the Q&A so we can get at them efficiently and get your answers. If you could advance one. So today's webinar, for those of you that are looking for CEUs, today's webinar, they're offering complimentary CEUs. Thank you to James L. West Center. Complimentary CEUs for licensed nursing, social work, licensed professional counselors, and also a certificate of attendance. Please note those are for the licenses in Texas. I'll say what I say on mine. If you have a license outside of Texas or a different license in Texas, you might as well go through the process and get a certificate and submit it to them if you're going to be on, and let them decide whether they'll take it or not. I'll tell you, on my webinars, I've had people tell me they've been able to take it even in other states, and I've also had jurisdictions send me information, wanting more information on a webinar so they could determine if it met their standards. So I do know it does work in places, so you might as well go through the process. Today's webinar is worth 1.5 hours of CEU credits. You must complete the SurveyMonkey evaluation form in order to be eligible for CEUs, because that is what triggers the CEUs. That's what tells us that you want CEUs, because you'll answer that question in the SurveyMonkey evaluation. The survey evaluation will be open till the 19th. It will go out in a follow-up email tomorrow. I will also try to remember to put it in the chat before we're all done today, so you can have it today if you would like it. But it will go out in the email, follow-up email that will go out tomorrow. In addition, give them 4 to 5 weeks from the 19th to get the certificates out to you. It is a very tedious, time-consuming process, and so please give them the time to get those out to you. If you don't have it by then, please, you're more than welcome to email and check, but please don't bother them beforehand. They've got a lot of things going on, and when you're calling them 2 weeks from now, asking them where your CEUs are, it just slows everything down for everyone. So if you could give them the 4 or 5 weeks, we would certainly appreciate it. In addition to the SurveyMonkey, there's also a Google evaluation survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar today. As you close out, Zoom will simply say, would you like to take a short survey? It is a very short survey. We would appreciate it if you do that. That link will also be in the follow-up email as well. I'm going to turn it over to Holly Lowe and let her tell us about Hospice 101.
Thanks, Marty. Glad everybody is here. Thank you. There's my information if you are someone who is needing CEs today. So I am Holly Lowe. saw lots of names that we see on here month after month. So we're very glad that you're here. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a grief therapist, trauma therapist, and a certified death doula. And yes, there's my friends, the Carters, right there. That is President Carter and First Lady Rosalind Carter. I was blessed to be able to be trained at the Rosalind Carter Institute and then was asked to come back and be the Caregiver of the Year keynote in the state of Georgia in 2019. So I was so blessed to get to know the Carters before they passed. Glad that you are here. Our course description, and again, our course objectives, those of you that have to have the CEs, this is a difficult topic. We always have so many people who join us for this topic because it's something we all need to know about, whether you are on here as a professional or you're on here as a family member. This is something we all need to know about, but we don't want to talk about. But this is the time to talk about it. Like Marty said, this is the time to talk about it. We want to talk about it while we are not in crisis. Let's learn about this while we're not in crisis. It is hard to be making decisions once we're in crisis. So we are going to jump in. If you start to have questions, like Marty said, please put them in the Q&A. We're going to cover a lot. If you want to leave them till closer to end of time and see if I cover it for you, you can always contact me privately. You can call me here at the West Center, or you can email me. It's going to be on the last slide, but it's my name, hlow@jameslwest.org. So we're going to look at 3 different kinds of care to get started with. The one that we probably know the most about is curative care, our day-to-day care that most of us do. So what does curative care focus on? We've got a couple of words here we want to make sure and land on. Quantity of life, a cure, and prolonging life. Now keep this in mind. A cure and prolonging life. This is called curative care. Now, what can happen with curative care is it can actually cause suffering if there's no longer a cure, but we continue to try to treat like there is. And I'm going to give you some examples as we go through today. We could be doing treatments and procedures that are needlessly extending not quality of life, but quantity of life. And so we end up with suffering. That can be a respirator. It could be IVs. It could be infusions or tube feeding. It could be central lines or PICC lines. And it can be full resuscitation or chest compressions. Now, those of you that are in Texas, and I know we've got an international audience today, but those of you that are in Texas, if you are 18 years old or older and you have not done your paperwork, you have not done your advance directives, your living will, the state of Texas will make a decision for you. And that decision is going to be to put you on life support. And then somebody's going to have to come in and sign the papers to take you off of life support if that was not your wishes. Make sure your paperwork is done. In the state of Texas and in many states, you can find your paperwork online, and this is a whole different program we could do. Your advance directives, that's also called a living will. Make sure you have that paperwork done. And if you haven't done it in a long time, because what my paperwork said at 28 and what it said at 45 and what it says at 56 is very different. Make sure you got your paperwork done. You also do not want to put your family in the position that they are having to make a decision because you didn't do your paperwork. Now, let me give you an example, and this is actually a personal example from my ex-husband. His father, having an angiogram, which they do every day, all day long, had a massive stroke on the table. They put him on life support. He had not done his paperwork. He then, in his 30s, had to come in and sign the papers to take his dad off of life support. Now, imagine what that did. We didn't even know he was in the hospital, first of all. And then he's having to sign the paper. So he felt like I signed the paper that killed my dad, was the feeling that he had. Now, we know the reality of that, the rash. Don't do that to your kids. Do your paperwork. And if you need that paperwork, contact me. You can also find it online. Let's go to the next type of care. palliative care. And we're going to answer this a couple of times. What's the difference in hospice and palliative care? So, palliative care, we're going to focus on comfort and quality of life. We're also going to focus on quality of death. Now, here's the key. With palliative care, you can still be receiving treatments. You can still be receiving treatments, which means you may still be receiving chemo. You may still be receiving radiation. You may still be receiving dialysis. You're receiving treatments that are life-sustaining. Comfort and quality of life. But we're going to shift the focus where we're not focusing on quantity, we're focused on quality. And we're going to start to look at death as a natural part of life. We're going to relieve those physical, the psychosocial, the spiritual suffering as much as we possibly can. So now let's look at, so what is hospice? Hospice is when we focus on comfort measures and quality of life when there is no longer a cure possible. Now, there are some diseases where there is no cure. We are dementia specialists here at the West Center. We don't have a treatment for dementia. And you're going to see today when we get to the statistics how some statistics have changed in hospice care. I just updated them today because statistics change every 6 months in healthcare. Hospice is the most intensive comfort care available. It is for the last 6 months of life, hopefully, if we get on soon enough. And it is care, not cure. It is comfort measures, not curative measures. So that's just some basic definitions of curative, palliative, and hospice, but we're going to deep dive into those. Let's start. We're going to watch a very short video introducing us to hospice.
As people live longer and medical treatments are more advanced, we tend to see older patients with a lot of complex medical needs. So there is a increasing need for hospice, and most people wish to be in the place where they've lived. They don't want to spend their last moments and days in the ER or in the hospital. They want to spend them with the people that they love and the environment that they love. And so we have a great need for this. And that's what hospice is able to do. They're a great support system to help patients age and ultimately spend their last days of their life in an environment that they choose to be in. A hospice is a part of medicine that we utilize when somebody has a terminal illness that can't be cured. It's thought of as just the end of life. And it is on a certain level, because if you have an illness that can't be cured by traditional medical, treatments, then, we say this person is terminal. But hospice is so much more than that. It's about people really focusing on quality of life. It's about patients and families saying, my treatment or my illness doesn't have a treatment. But that doesn't mean that I don't have hope, that I don't have happiness. That means I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay wherever my home may be, whether it's a facility, it's, with my daughter or wherever. And I'm going to focus on the things that make me happy and that make me comfortable. And the hospice team helps them do that. So as their disease progresses, they may have symptoms that are then treated by the physician, but they also listen to their spiritual needs and emotional needs. And we have music volunteers and massage therapists and pet volunteers. They really get to know the whole patient, and they get to say, okay, this is what this whole person needs, not just the disease, not just the symptoms. And then as a team, we figure out what we can do to get them that care. And this will continue till their very last breath. It's one of the best things that medicine can provide to our community.
And it actually continues for the family after the loved one has passed away because of the grief services that are offered. And we'll look more at that. I want us to start, though, so that you understand, where does this even come from? Where does hospice come from? So let's go back and see where it came from. There is a Latin word, hospice, that actually means guest or visitor or host and where it came from. Crusaders who were on their way to the Holy Land needed places of refuge, and they would find it in monasteries. So what happened is that many times they started calling them a hospice because so many of the people who would end up in the monasteries were so ill that they ended up dying while they were there. Now, notice that word hospice. What are some other words you can think of that kind of have that root? What about hospital, hospitable? It all comes from hospice. So, how did we then end up with what we now know today as a hospice? And Cicely Saunders introduced hospice to the United States, and it really wasn't that long ago. Now, some of the younger people on here are going to go, that was in the 1900s, 1963. In big scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago, actually. But she established the first purpose-built hospice in London in 1967. And I want you to hear this quote. And you know I don't read slides, those of you that are on here, but I want you to hear this quote. You matter because you are you. You matter till the last moment of your life. We will do all we can, not only to help you die peacefully, but also to live until you die. That's hospice. To live until you die. You heard in the video, there's still hope. There's still happiness to be had, even after someone's on hospice. We talk about that with dementia. Even with a dementia diagnosis, there is joy to be had. So in hospice, whenever this was first, they just getting it going, it's holistic hospice care. So let's look at how then did it end up in the United States. Cicely Saunders, again, 1965, became a faculty member at the Yale School of Nursing. Then the dean of the Yale School of Nursing took a sabbatical and went to learn everything she could about hospice. And then here's a name that many of you you have heard of. If you are a social worker, a nurse, a counselor, or this is just a topic that maybe you've read about, you've heard of Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, because she published a book. It was the first of its kind on death and dying. And she is the one who came up with the 5 stages through which she believed terminally ill patients progress. And just a reminder to everyone, those 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. It became an international bestseller. It is still used today. It's still referred to today. Now, she went on to say, it is not only the patient, and a lot of people say, no, 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 there's no stages. There's no stages. Well, when you study this and you look at it, there's most definitely stages. We don't necessarily go through them in order, and we go back through them. But she worked with a gentleman named David Kessler, and they came up with a 6th stage called meaning. When we've moved through our grief and we get to that point of acceptance, and then we find meaning in the loss. Meaning in the loss. Again, that could be a whole nother program as well. But I want you to hear what Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said when she testified at the first national hearing about death with dignity. Now look at the date on this. It's 1972, and she's in front of the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging. We could say this today and it still applies, because listen to her quote. We live in a very particular death-denying society. We isolate both the dying and the old, and it serves a purpose. They are reminders of our own mortality. We can give families more help with home care and visiting nurses, giving the families and the patients the spiritual, emotional, and financial help in order to facilitate the final care at home. She was so forward thinking. This was in 1972. Think about the age of the baby boomers in 72. Now all of our baby boomers are over 60. And we don't have enough beds. And here she is in 72 going, why don't we facilitate final care at home? Let's get something in place. So she's before the U.S. Senate. Keep that in mind. So in 74, the first American hospice was opened. 1974, again, big scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago. But look what happened when it went before The first hospice legislation, it was not enacted in 1974. Now we're going to skip all the way up to 1982. In 1982, Congress included a provision to create a Medicare benefit for hospice. And in 86, it became permanent. Medicare covers hospice. The majority of people do not know that or understand that they've been paying into this their entire career. They've been paying into it. We're going to talk more about who pays for hospice, but Medicare typically is who people use. It took until 1991 for it to become a VA benefit. Most recent statistics in the United States right now, 9,458 hospice agencies, about 71% are for-profit, 26% are nonprofits, and 3% are owned by the government. And right now, this is the latest statistics. I updated this morning, 1.72 million patients on hospice. And I want you to see this also, because many times we get to thinking, well, who is it on hospice care? It's the oldest of the old. And statistically, it is 61.8% over the age of 85. But look at some of these other statistics. And no, this does not add up to 100% because that's not what it's saying. 49.4% of people between the ages of 75 and 84 are on hospice. 37.7% of the people between 65 and 74 are on hospice. And then look at this one. Of the people under the age of 65, more than a quarter of them are on hospice. Let's break it down. Look at these numbers. What a difference this is. And I want you to, why is this? Think about why this is, that 51.6% of people on hospice are Caucasian, and then we've got a big drop. And the numbers have changed because I just changed them. So that's why they're out of order now. Because now the Hispanic population is 38.3%, 37.4% of African Americans. So let's look at the hospice philosophy and what it's about. Whether the hospice is a for-profit or a not-for-profit, it's the same philosophy. And we're going to talk about the difference in the for-profit and the not-for-profit. The patient and the family together are seen as the unit of care. Hospice is not just about the patient. And you'll hear me using the word patient because in hospice, we do use the word patient. Where I work, we use the word resident. Lots of times in therapy, we use the word client. But in hospice, I'm going to use the word patient. So hospice is going to come in, it's going to be holistic and take care of the physical, emotional, and spiritual concerns of the entire family. But it's not cookie cutter care. It is individualized care to meet the patient's needs and to meet the family's needs. They are also very responsive to differences in lifestyles. More about that philosophy. Hospice, here's the key to take from this slide. Hospice is going to focus on caring, not curing. Because at this point, by the time we're ready for a hospice referral, there is no cure. That's the point. That's what she talked about in the video. It can't be cured at this point. Hospice provides education. Every family has a social worker. Every family has a chaplain. Every family has those CNAs. They have nurses. There is a doctor. We're going to look at the hospice team. That hospice team is going to make sure that that family understands and accepts. They're helping them work through to the acceptance of the journey of life and that it does eventually end. We live in a society, again, like that quote said from the 60s and the 70s, we don't talk about death. In fact, we act like it isn't going to happen. We're pretty bad about sticking our head in the sand or la 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 la. If we don't talk about it, it won't happen. But that's why this program always has so many people on it, because we actually know it's going to, and we're all going to be affected by end of life. The other thing with hospice is they are going to focus on making the symptoms less severe without removing the cause of the symptoms, because at this point, the cause cannot be removed. And again, it's going to be physical, psychosocial, and spiritual comfort. And it's going to be delivered by a multidisciplinary staff. So why do we choose hospice? When do we go on hospice? This is one of the top 5 questions I get asked. How do we know when it's time for hospice? Top bullet point here. When all medical treatments have been exhausted, or, this is big, the burden of the treatment outweighs the benefit, it might be time to consider hospice. Let me give you another personal example that happened to somebody that I knew. The woman had cancer. She'd had it for quite some time. Her son was a senior in high school. She needed to get that boy out of high school. She needed him to graduate. There was no cure for her cancer at this point. Her chemo, her radiation was keeping her alive, but miserable. But she was alive. There was no quality of life, but she needed to get him out of school. So she continued to do the treatment on palliative care where you can receive treatment and comfort measures, same time. And as soon as he graduated, she switched over to hospice care. She stopped doing the radiation. She stopped doing the chemotherapy. She actually got better because she wasn't putting the chemotherapy and the radiation into her body. And for about 3 months, she had some beautiful time with her family. And then she passed. So when she stopped the treatments, her body wasn't getting the poison that chemotherapy can be and radiation can be, and she kind of rebounded back and had some good quality time. That's what it means when it says the burden of treatment outweighs the benefits. Hard decision. That's where you talk to somebody like me, you talk to a social worker, you talk to nurses, you talk to a hospice company. They'll walk you through this. Most people also, if they were asked, because think about if somebody asked you, where would you want to spend your last days? And the majority of people will say home. That they don't want to have their last days be in the hospital. They want to be surrounded by loved ones. Hospice can also help that family and the patient feel like they have a greater sense of control. Pain and symptom management are at the top of the list of what hospice provides. So, how do we become eligible for hospice? The prognosis is 6 months or less. 6 months or less. Now, how do we know that? We don't always know that. I've had someone live for 3 years on hospice before. We don't know. We don't know how long someone has. We're going to look at some statistics of how long most people are on hospice, but it's when the doctor feels like they have 6 months or less. Other eligibility guidelines: losing body weight, 10% of body weight in the last 4 to 6 months. And with dementia, many times this last one, observable and documented deterioration in their overall condition in the last 4 to 6 months. So where is it provided? We just said home. So about 52% of people are on hospice at their home. About 17% of people in a nursing facility or a long-term care, that's what we are, a licensed nursing home, a freestanding hospice facility, an assisted living facility, or look at this one. They might be in a hospital, they could be in a homeless shelter, they could be in jail and be on hospice. You can live under a bridge and be on hospice. It's wherever the person lives, that's where the hospice goes. So the structure of hospice, it is set up by an IDT team, an interdisciplinary team. They then develop what's called a plan of care. This is where that individualized care comes in. They meet and discuss that patient at least every 14 days, more often if they need to, and we're going to look at the members of the team. It starts with the medical director, and this is the doctor, this is the physician. They're going to certify that that patient is eligible. They're going to give direction and support. They're going to write the orders, and they'll visit the patients as needed. There's then going to be what's called a director of patient care services. And this is the person who manages that team of providers. They supervise the patient care. They're going to make sure that that plan of care is carried out, that they're getting the right level of care, the right timing, the right place. There's a nurse case manager who's going to manage all of the care over the nurses. They're going to be over if there's RNs on staff, LVNs, you may call them LPNs where you are, CNAs, and they're also going to coordinate often with that social worker. Then there's home health hospice aides. It might be a CNA, a certified nurse assistant, and they are there to help with ADLs, activities of daily living, showering, getting dressed, personal care, brushing teeth. They can sometimes, depending on the hospice, assist at mealtime. They can even sometimes assist with housekeeping, again, depending on the hospice. They're also going to have a social worker, and some have a counselor on staff, someone like me, an LPC. They may have an LBSW, an LMSW, or an LCSW on staff, social workers. They are there to give that emotional and mental support, the counseling to the family and to the patient. They can help with the financial evaluation, assistance for resources. They organize transfers, admission to facilities, transportation. They do it all. I happen to have given birth to one of those. My daughter is a hospice social worker, so I know what they do. They work and they are there to take care of the families. Then there's the spiritual care coordinator. Some places will call this the chaplain, and they also work with that social worker to provide the spiritual support, the emotional support, the prayer support, and many times they will help the families plan the funeral service, and they will even do the memorials if the family doesn't have someone to do them. There's a bereavement coordinator who will follow up with the family for 13 months after the death of their loved one. Think about why it's 13 months. 13 months. We make the full year of anniversaries, including the anniversary of the death date, plus 1 month. So 13 months. Then there may be therapists on staff. And by therapist, I mean music therapist, speech therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, massage therapist. Now, are they there to cure anything? No, because this isn't curative, this is comfort. So with physical therapy, occupational therapy, they may use something called restorative to help them maintain the level that they're at so those plateaus last longer. And then the hospice, again, depending on the size of the hospice, if it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit, may very well have volunteers. I started out in hospice as a volunteer, non-patient care, coming and providing companionship, assisting in an office somewhere. The number one thing I was asked to do, and this was when I was still a school teacher, I was a hospice volunteer, and I was asked to read the Bible over and over and over. I would come in and the families would ask me, could you sit and read the Bible with our loved one? Or the person on hospice would ask me to read the Bible, and I'd get right up in the bed with them and lay there beside them and read the Bible to them. It's kind of things that are offered. How would you know? Got to ask. Things that hospice helps with, of course, number one, that pain management and symptom control. We're going to watch a video about that next. Skin breakdown, because as someone is approaching end of life, it is very common to have skin breakdown. The blood isn't circulating like it normally does. They're not moving as much as they normally do. And in the case of dementia, their brain is failing. Their brain is failing. Nutritional counseling. In the video we're about to watch, you're going to hear her talk about one of the things that families worry about the most is that their loved one stops eating. Well, they stop eating because they're dying. They don't die because they stop eating. Hear that again. They don't die because they stop eating. They stop eating because they're dying. Food is fuel. We use food for everything, don't we? We use food because I'm happy, I'm going to eat. I'm sad, I'm going to eat. It's Monday, I'm going to eat. It's noon, I got to eat. But food's actually just fuel. And the body knows that. And it doesn't need it anymore, and they will stop eating. Family problems, stress management, that need for companionship, advanced directives, DNRs, the do not resuscitates, and the power of attorney. They can also provide respite care so that family gets a break. Let's watch this video from Barbara Carnes. She is an expert in the field, and she's going to talk more about what to expect at the end of life.
Dying is not a medical event. Dying is a social, communal event. And when we're at the bedside of someone who's dying, it is all about the community, about the togetherness, not about the medical stuff that's going on. But families don't know that. There are new rules for end-of-life care. Taking care of someone in the last months of their life is not like taking care of someone who's going to get better. But most people don't know this. And so my job is to help families understand the new rules. The normal, natural way that a person dies has a process. And that process involves three things: eating, sleeping, and withdrawing from the world around them. The hardest thing for me to get people to understand is that when a person has entered the dying process, it's okay not to eat. Food is what holds us in our body. Food is the anchor that holds us, that gives us grounding. And if the body's preparing to die, it doesn't want the food or the grounding. It's trying to let go. Dying is not painful. Dying does not cause pain. Disease causes pain. So you're going to look at a person's disease history to understand end-of-life pain. We watchers of the dying process are identifying it as it looks painful. Dying itself is not. The person's so removed from their physical body that they don't experience it in the same way that we who have a firm grip on this planet feel it. If pain has been a part of the disease process, and there's a lot of disease out there that has pain, then you are going to treat that pain until the person's last breath. There is no reason today for any person to die in pain. And if someone says to me, we've done everything we can and this person is still in pain, then my answer is, you have not done everything. What we want to give to that person who's leaving us is our presence, is our love, our care, and our concern. And it isn't necessarily the words that we say. It's our being there. The person who's dying, they're reaching a point where words really don't mean anything. It's that you're there. It's the touch, the holding. It's okay to get in bed with your loved one. It's okay to have the dog on the bed. It is that communal companionship, that presence that means more than anything else in the days to hours to even months before death.
She does a beautiful job. There is a time that's called actively dying, and a person can be actively dying, like Barbara just said, days, weeks, to even months before the death. Keep in mind what she mentioned, the changes in eating. They stop eating because they're dying. The changes in sleeping. They may sleep up to 20 plus hours a day, withdrawing from the world and kind of coming back into themselves. She also mentioned that dying itself is not painful. So let's compare that to birth. Birth for the baby, those of you that are mothers, don't be sending me ugly emails now, but just for that baby, it's not hurting that baby. The baby cries because it's now out of that environment it had been in, and we're hanging it upside down and we're cleaning it. That's why the baby's crying, not because it's in pain. Death itself isn't painful. It's a normal part of life is death. Disease is painful. And depending on what type of disease they have or why they are dying, that's where pain comes in. Notice she also mentioned our presence is what's important. And then I'll even add to that our touch. Our touch is important because many times families are scared to death to touch their loved one that is actively passing, and that's what they need. They need touch. They need compassionate touch, especially palm to palm. Palm to palm is I'm safe. I'm not alone. There's someone here. We've got a whole program on end of life, by the way. So you can contact me about that too. Here's some other things that hospice can help with. For the most part, if this is still correct, and somebody who works for hospice can correct me, the last time I checked, as far as respite goes, it was 6 days and 5 nights that they could get every benefit period, which I think was every 45 days. And then there's a 90-day benefit period, and then it goes to a 60-day benefit period. So I think that's what it is, but there's respite that can be provided also. So let's talk about levels of care. There's different levels of care with hospice. There's the routine hospice home care. This is the most common type of hospice. This is hospice in the home, wherever their home is. Keep that in mind, wherever their home is. There's continuous home care. This is provided between 8 to 24 hours a day to manage pain and other acute medical symptoms. This is typically a nurse. This is typically a bedside nurse. Many times we'll call that CC care, continuous care nurse. This is when there's uncontrolled pain or agitation. We don't see it that often. We can get it. There was a time when everybody, way back in the day, I'm going to age myself here, where everybody who became imminent would pretty much get a CC nurse, but there are not enough nurses to sit with everybody who's imminent, and not everybody needs a nurse sitting bedside. But if there's uncontrolled pain or agitation, there can be a continuous home care. There's inpatient respite care. And this is where part of that hospice benefit is some respite care for the caregiver. And so it can be provided. Sometimes they'll do it in the patient's home. It can be at a long-term care facility. Sometimes it's at a hospital or a hospice facility, and it has 24-hour nursing. And then there's that general inpatient care. Every once in a while, you heard Barbara say, if someone says, we've done everything and we can't get this pain under control, then you haven't done everything, because there's more that can be done. We could place them inpatient to get on top of that pain or any other acute symptom. We typically don't have to do this, but it can be done. It can be in a hospital, in a hospice facility, in a long-term care facility, anywhere that there's 24-hour nursing. So who pays for hospice? We've already talked about it is a Medicare benefit. It is a Medicaid benefit. Private insurance pays for it. It can be self-pay or at a reduced pay or free care. Every hospice I have ever known, whether it was for-profit or not-for-profit, had charity care as well. Medicare covers, make sure you hear this, 100% of hospice services with no copay. Now, are there some things that are not covered? Yes, we're going to talk about that. Medicare covers 100% of the hospice services. It's a Medicare benefit. Now, it does not cover the room and board at a nursing facility. It does not cover care that's unrelated to that diagnosis for why they're terminal. It does not cover if somebody decides we're going to go off and go see a specialist and try to care sought without consulting the hospice team. It does not cover private sitters. It doesn't cover curative or aggressive treatments. And it doesn't cover brand name medications that don't have a generic. Some barriers to hospice. People are afraid it takes away hope. And we're going to talk about the most common myths. Death versus failure can come up. I don't want to disappoint I don't want to let down misconceptions and myths. And again, we're going to go over the most common. And then lack of consistency between physicians, where we may have an oncologist who's still wanting to be really aggressive, but we've got a primary care over here going, it is time for hospice. We don't have quality of life here. And if you don't work in healthcare, we tend to listen to our doctors and not question. Sometimes we will blindly not question a physician. This happens a lot with people who have dementia. They have dementia. They already have a terminal illness. We know that all of the dementias are terminal. But then they go and do something like develop a cancer. Had this happen with one of my support group members very, very recently. Doctor wants to treat the cancer. And because the caregiver, the husband, was very educated and a member of our support group, he said, why would we treat the cancer? She already has a terminal illness. I'm not going to put her through something that could push her dementia forward. We're going to live out the rest of her life on hospice. We're going to have quality care. We're going to have comfort measures in place for her. Now, how long is a person on hospice? 18 days is the average length of stay, which is a shame. And it's because people are afraid to get on hospice because they hear the word hospice and they think it means they're dying right now. That is less than 3 weeks. 18 days, the average length of stay on hospice. That means that by the time they get on hospice, they're dying. That's the average. But patients with a principal diagnosis of dementia tend to be on longer because as those families get educated, and I will tell families, ask for a hospice referral. The worst thing they can do is say, no, they don't qualify yet. Why wouldn't you bring on an additional team of help? Let's get to some of these myths. And I know we're going to be pushing it on time, but we're going to go through here. Okay, let's look at the myths. If a patient lives longer than 6 months, he or she will automatically be discharged from hospice. False, false, false. So you have unlimited 60-day recertification periods. They just have to recertify. And what that will sometimes look like is they've lost another pound or two, or however many pounds. They've had some falls. They've had an infection of some type, many times a urinary tract infection. There's all different ways that a person stays on hospice. They continue to decline. Let's look at this. Hospice is only for dying people. Hospice is for the entire family. Hospice is for the family. They can access that hospice care for up to 6 months before the passing. Now, some live longer, and listen to this. Some hospice patients live longer than others with the same illness who are not on hospice because they've stopped the aggressive treatments. And they do, like the woman I mentioned earlier, they kind of bounce back to comfort level and they'll plateau for a while. Once you enter hospice, there's no turning back. You can come off of hospice at any time and then go right back on. A person can come off of hospice and then go back on. They can also change hospice providers at any time because you may get with a hospice provider that's just not the right fit. And just like you would change doctors or just like you would change anything, you have the right to change hospice providers. Patients on hospice can no longer see their doctor. That is a myth. Hospice encourage patients to continue to see their physicians. Now, they also have a physician, they have that medical director, and then the hospice nurse will keep that physician updated, but you can continue to see your physician. But keep in mind, we're not treating anymore. We're not doing curative measures anymore because we're to the point that there are no curative measures. Another myth, if patients go on hospice, they can no longer seek any treatments. Symptom management and pain control are the main goals of hospice. The only thing that we're not going to do on hospice is a curative treatment. That's why we're on hospice, is because there's no more curative treatment, or the benefit is causing more damage than good. Because remember, hospice is about quality of life, not quantity of life. Another myth, hospice is only for people who can accept death. That's not the case. There's not a magic wand that hospice social worker or nurse or chaplain is going to wave, but they're trained to help families move forward toward the journey of end of life. Hospice is for people who don't need a high level of medical care. It is a high level of medical care. It is very serious medicine. They have experts who work for hospice. It is a field that people go into. I told you earlier, I am a certified death doula. There's a whole group of us who this is our field of expertise, is end of life. They offer state-of-the-art care in how to keep the patient and the family comfortable during a time that isn't very comfortable. They're not going to make it go away, but they talk you through it. Another myth, hospice is for when there's no hope in sight. So we've got two things that we can do. When death is in sight, two things we can do. We can yield to the hopelessness, or we can live life as fully as possible until the end. That's the two choices we've got. To just give in and be completely hopeless, or go, we're going to live life as full as possible until the last breath. There's still life to be had. There's still joy to be had. And on this slide, I'm calling hospice a gift. The gift of hospice, the capacity to help families see how much can be shared at the end of life through personal and spiritual connections and sharing. Another myth, hospice is expensive. We've already talked about this. It is a Medicare benefit, and it covers virtually everything. There's very few, if any, out-of-pocket expenditures by the family. Keep in mind, if somebody is under the age of 65, their private insurance will likely cover it, Medicaid covers it, and then there's always charity. And if one hospice can't do it, then you find a hospice that can. And if you're in Texas, you call me and I'll help you find a hospice that can. I could probably help you even if you're not in Texas. So let's do the most commonly asked questions about hospice. And some of this is going to repeat because this is the most commonly asked questions. What is it they really do? And again, keep in mind the holistic symptom management, emotional support, spiritual support. No matter where you are, they can meet you where you are. They will meet the family right where they are. That social intervention. They address the issues. What's most important to the patient? What's most important to the families? Improving their quality of life. I've worked with hospice now for a very, very long time. And I had someone one time, and those of you who are in the DFW area, you're going to know what I'm talking about. Some of you will know because they have these in other areas. We have the Gaylord hotels, and they do a program called ICE at Christmas. And I had a woman who was on hospice, and she'd never been to the Gaylord. And that was one of her wishes, was to stay at the Gaylord with a grandchild and go to ICE. And it was something that the hospice made happen, almost like a make-a-wish for an adult. That was important to her, to be able to do that. Quality of life. Another question, I get asked this all the time. We've already answered it on this program. How do I know when it's time? When the professionals, when the prognosis is 6 months or less. When symptom management, care, and comfort are now the primary focus. And when curative treatments are no longer a choice or an option, that's when we're going to call. More frequently asked questions. Where is it provided? We've talked about that as well. It's wherever the patient is. It can be at home. It can be in a nursing home. It can be in assisted living. It can be in jail. Are they all the same? No, they are not all the same. There are for-profit, there's not for-profit. Some of the bigger ones may have some things that some of the smaller ones don't. I've known hospices that had music therapy, pet therapy, all different types of things that they could provide, where maybe a smaller one doesn't have that. Doesn't mean that one's better than the other. So you want to interview before you need them. There's the key. Get out and do this footwork, do this interviews now. Same thing, if you've got a loved one with dementia, don't wait until you need to place them before you start looking around for someplace. And please don't think to yourself, I've got time, because we never know. You don't want to be making decisions in crisis. Do not wait and make decisions in crisis. Can my pain and symptoms be controlled at home? Yes, and yes. Almost always. Pain, nausea, vomiting, difficulty breathing. If it becomes a problem, a hospice nurse can be reached 24/7. Most can be controlled at home. Most can be controlled without injections and without IVs, because everything about hospice, keep in mind, is comfort, and IVs, injections, are not very comfortable. Medications come in so many different forms. Liquid, sublingual, under the tongue, and then it dissolves. Patches that we can put on people. There's lots and lots of ways for comfort measures. I've been with, I'm guessing I've probably gone over 500 people now as they've died. And I'm right there with Barbara. There's no reason for somebody to be in pain. And if they are in pain, then we need to do something else. We don't want our loved ones to be in pain. You wouldn't want to die in pain. You wouldn't want to die with extreme terminal restlessness. And hospice is available 24/7. You should always be able to reach your hospice. Now, then it says, here's another question. Do they provide 24-hour in-home care? And they do not provide that. They have nurses who come in. They have those CNAs, or the medical aides, who come in and provide with that ADL, or activities of daily living time, but they're available 24/7. You can get the social worker, you can get the chaplain, they can come out and do visits, but they're not going to be there 24/7. If a person lives alone, can they still receive hospice services at home? They can, but part of that admission paperwork is going to be making a plan for what are we going to do when you can't be alone anymore. So they're going to help you talk through that. Can a hospice patient choose to return to curative treatments? Of course you can. Let's say that a person had been doing, and we'll just use cancer, they've been doing radiation and chemotherapy. They come off, maybe they get to feeling a little bit better, and they say, I'm going to go try it again. I'm going to try. Of course you can. And then when you're ready, you can come right back on hospice. Can I go to the hospital and still receive hospice care? We get asked this a lot. Yes. However, here's what's normally going to happen. And again, I'm going to use dementia as an example. Let's say that our loved one is on hospice. They have dementia. They fall, break open their head, and we can't get the bleeding to stop here. You can't get the bleeding to stop at home. We need to send them to the hospital because they need some staples. They can come off of hospice long enough to go to the hospital, get the staples put in the head, come back home, go right back on hospice. So let's look at this answer. The other thing I want you to keep in mind, though, is many families and patients, once they go on hospice, will say, we do not want any more hospital visits. we are finished being at the hospital. Now, especially for dementia, the absolute worst place someone can be is the hospital. Well, we think there's doctors and nurses there. Right, there's doctors and nurses there that are not dementia care experts, and they don't understand the disease, and it can actually push that disease forward because of the trauma of being in the hospital. So we're going to try to treat everything where they are. We're going to try to successfully manage everything that we can at home so that we don't have the stress of the hospital. If they have to go in, we want to keep them in for the shortest amount of time as possible. If they're not receiving aggressive treatments, let's say that somebody has that UTI, that urinary tract infection, and we're going to treat a UTI because it's uncomfortable. Again, people will say, well, we're not going to treat anything. Well, we're going to treat pain, and UTI is pain. So of course we're going to treat a UTI. But are we going to treat it in the hospital? Are we going to treat it at the nursing home or at the assisted living or at home? That's where we're going to treat it. Now, the family can choose to go in the hospital and have IV antibiotics and see if they'll work. Keep in mind with dementia, though, those of you who've got that dementia education, what worked 6 months ago might not work now because that part of the brain that tells that antibiotic to work may not even be there anymore. This is a progressive terminal illness. Education. Another question is the decision of hospice care giving up or wanting to die? No, hospice is about living. Hospice is about quality of life. Some other frequently asked questions. Does hospice do anything to bring death sooner? Of course not. The goal is to alleviate suffering and manage their symptoms. It does not do anything to speed it up, just like it's not doing anything to slow it down. It's just to let it run its course and keep them as comfortable as possible. Do I have to be homebound to receive hospice services? No, I just told you about a woman who went and stayed at the Gaylord with her grandson. It's about living. And as long as the person can go and do, let's go and do. That's part of living. That's why I tell people, get on hospice sooner rather than later. Take advantage of that Medicare benefit. That hospice team can actually help you get some goals and dreams put together. There's some that do a legacy team. Let's build a legacy book. Let's record their life story. Let's do. That's part of living well until the very end. And then the question of, does hospice provide service to the family after the patient dies? We've answered that. 13 months. 13 months. They should be keeping you on service, checking in with you, offering grief support groups, offering one-on-one counseling, getting you to somebody like us. If they don't, they should be referring you to someone. So that question we started with, the difference in hospice and palliative care, I hope that you feel pretty good about answering that question now yourself. Some other differences. Palliative care isn't defined by that 6-month hospice benefit. It provides comfort, it improves quality of life, but they can still be getting curative treatments. Now, this last bullet point, think about this. All hospice is palliative. All hospice is palliative because all hospice is comfort care. But all palliative isn't hospice. There's the comfort care, but you can still be getting treatment. Let's look at the diseases that we see the most often as a terminal illness on hospice. And these have changed over the years. That's why it looks like they're out of order, because look at what's number 1 now. I just changed this number. Our baby boomers are now all over 60, 61, I think now, as a matter of fact. And 25% of the people that are on hospice are on for end-stage dementia. That's just going to keep going up. It's just going to keep going up. 23% are on for cancer. 22% on for cardiovascular. 6% for respiratory diseases, 5% for strokes, about 2% for kidney failure. And then here are some of the other terminal illnesses that we see. There's one that has been removed. There's actually two that's been removed. So let's go over what we have here in front of us, because some of these words used to, if you've been in healthcare for a while, we used to have that term adult failure to thrive. And now that's called protein calorie malnutrition. And it can be mild, moderate, or severe. And then the very last bullet point there, where it's just advanced end stage of life, old age. They're over life expectancy and they're just dying. And again, in the United States, we have a hard time with, they're 97 and they died. Well, why did they die? Because they were 97. That's why they died. Did they have a heart attack? Probably not. Did they have a stroke? Probably not. Well, what happened to them? They died. That's what happened to them. Their heart quit beating because they quit beating. They weren't meant to last forever. We have a hard time accepting that. Let's look at the summary, and then we are going to go to the questions because I think I've got a lot of questions. So the summary of this: hospice is about living fully. It's about living. That hospice team comes in, they are an interdisciplinary team, physical, emotional, and spiritual support. That care is individualized. It is not cookie cutter care. It is there for the entire family. And if your loved one's on hospice and you're not receiving all of this, you need another hospice. And we've talked about it really isn't that hard to change. Anyone can ask about hospice early. The worst thing they're going to say, and it's not even that it's the worst thing, is it's not time yet. Inquire about it. Here's the key. It is not about giving up. It's about choosing comfort, compassion, and connection. That is the key to hospice. I've got the resources for those of you who are interested in that. Here's my information. Marty is going to come back on and going to go over the CEs again while I review the questions. And I am very serious when I say, if you have anything that you want to talk about one-on-one, you can email me, you can call me. I promise you I won't get back with you immediately. I promise I won't, because I am traveling and on the go, but I will get back with you. I promise you I will, but it will not be within the next just little bit, but I will get back with you. All right, Marty, there it is.
As you can imagine, Holly is very sought after to speak because she does an incredible job, and so that makes her not that makes her out and about and all over the place, right? She's helping lots of other people. So, but thank you to the James L. West Center. They are providing complimentary CEUs today for licensed nurses, social workers, and LPCs in the state of Texas, and also certificates of attendance. Today's webinar is worth 1.5 hours of CEU credits. I always say, if you have a different license in Texas or you have a license outside of Texas and you've been on the program, go ahead and go through the process, get a certificate and submit it to your jurisdiction. You never know if they're going to take it or not. I've had people tell me they've been able to use it for different licenses, even licenses out of state. And I've been approached by licensing jurisdictions asking for more information about a webinar we've done in order for them to determine whether it meets their threshold. So go through the process, do it. It doesn't hurt to fill out the evaluation form and get it if you've already been on for the whole webinar. In order to get any kind of certificate, you have to complete the SurveyMonkey. The SurveyMonkey evaluation will go in the chat just a few minutes after Holly starts answering your questions, and I can grab it and put it in the chat. It also will be emailed out to you in the follow-up email that will go out tomorrow. You have to complete the SurveyMonkey evaluation to get any kind of certificate. The Survey Monkey evaluation will be up and live until the 19th. Please give them 4 to 5 weeks after that to get those certificates to you. Believe me, the CEU certificates is a very, very tedious process. And so, but they will get to you. If you don't get them in that time, feel free to email me. I get with Jamie, and you know, she gets to the bottom of it in no time at all. So, but also, we are asking you to fill out the Google survey. That helps us get back to the people that fund us to do this, so that we can get back to them on the goals and objectives we set forth when we applied for the funding. So that will come up when you close out of Zoom today. It will ask you if you would like to take a short survey. And if you just click on that, it will take you directly to the Google survey. And once again, I'll put the Survey Monkey in the chat here in just a minute. It will also go out in the follow-up email. Next month is an incredibly popular, incredibly important one. We do, in fact, we've done this each year, and I really encourage you, if you are getting together for Thanksgiving, or you're traveling for Thanksgiving, or have a relative coming to visit for Thanksgiving that has dementia, you can go back on our YouTube channel and find this. But I really suggest that you watch it before Thanksgiving if you're having them for Thanksgiving. It's incredible. Holly does an incredible job with this. But please join us in December. We're going to be doing it live. Please help us get the word out to anybody, especially people that are struggling with family members that are just starting to deal with dementia, and just kind of overwhelmed by what am I facing, right? And so I highly suggest that. Holly, I'm gonna let you answer questions. I'm gonna get find the monkey Survey Monkey evaluation.
Gotcha. All right. Somebody asked about the two that have been removed from the hospice list, and that would be COVID has been removed from the hospice list, and AIDS has been removed from the hospice list, because we have pushed enough money toward HIV and AIDS that people can live a normal life expectancy. Now, can they still die from it? Of course they can. But is it something that's in the top reasons that people are on hospice? It is not anymore. We would love to see dementia go on that list of no longer on the list. Okay, let's see how many I can answer. I've got 12 minutes here. Let me back up because I want to start back up here.
Well, but you're not kidding about wanting to see dementia show up on that list, boy.
Yes, I'm telling you. Okay, in hospice, yes, other occupations that I see in hospice that would be a real asset as workers in future hospice. Yes. So some of these I think I probably answered as we went on, because I mentioned physical therapy, occupational therapy, music therapist. There's all different types of people who can work on a hospice team, especially or if you're in a really big hospice. You're probably not going to find it as much in a smaller hospice. Good non-dementia caregiver support group. Absolutely, you can find those. There's a lot on Facebook. If you are just a and there's some good ones. Make sure though that you've got a licensed facilitator, or at least someone who's been trained to be a facilitator, because sometimes what you get are people who like to hear themselves talk. Let me put it that way, who aren't necessarily trained to be a support group leader, and they may be giving advice that they don't have any business giving. If you are needing a specific type of support group, if you'll contact me, I will help you find that. Anybody who's go ahead.
You can also contact the Area Agency on Aging. There's the statewide number is always in my follow-up emails for you to call. They'll ask you for a zip code, and they'll hook you up with the area agency on aging in your area, and they always should be able to help you find a support group if it's even non-dementia related.
Thank you. How many days of respite care was asked several times, and I'm going to ask that you ask the specific hospice about that because it has changed at different times. And so I'm going to ask you to contact hospice about that. How to start a conversation as a caregiver with a patient and family member to refer to hospice due to advanced age, not getting qualified for treatment like dialysis or similar situations. It really is. It's a hard thing to do, to start that conversation. And you want to make sure that you use a lot of compassion. All of these talks that I have with families or with you, in fact, I saw somebody said, oh my, you were able to do that with a lot of compassion. So we do want to use a lot of compassion. And it might be that you aren't the one that has the conversation, that you get into a patient portal and you send a note to the doctor, to the nurse practitioner, and allow them to help with that conversation. You might approach it as a family, where we're going to sit down together as a family and talk about, we want to make sure and do your wishes. Let's start talking about end of life or just those wishes. And again, so many times we've never even used the words end of life or dying because maybe we hope and wish that somebody's going to live forever, but we're just not. So we want to make sure and use a lot of compassion. And I could help you more with that if you've got some specific questions. Would patients or their families need to sell off or minimize their assets for Medicare? No, not for Medicare. That is Medicaid. It's different. So, but for Medicare, no. My understanding is that hospice patients can only see their primary care physician if it's for something that's not related to the hospice qualifying diagnosis. It's related to the patient's, and most people, by the time they get on hospice, honestly, they're seeing the hospice doctor, or they're seeing the doctor that's at the facility where they live. Correct. How to bring the hospice consent to the patient, how to bring the hospice concept to the patient. And again, we use a lot of compassion. We've done everything, and let's talk about what this is going to look like. Let's have that hard conversation about what do we want the end of our lives to look like? Here's what I want mine to look like. I use that a lot, where I'll start talking about, this is my wishes. What's your wishes? What does it look like for you? This is really hard to talk about, isn't it? That's validation therapy all day long. Is a dementia diagnosis eligible for hospice services? Yes. Can a patient continue to take medications for Parkinson's while on hospice? Yes. Can the use of morphine to manage pain increase the risk of dying? Myth. So, being the big scheme of medications, morphine is not near as strong as people think that it is. It is strong, but there's medications much stronger. The whole purpose of morphine is comfort. And we don't just start right out using morphine unless there's pain or discomfort. Now, like Barbara said in the video, you do not want to watch somebody die in pain. You don't. I promise you, you don't. You don't want to watch your loved one die with terminal restlessness because we were afraid to give the medication that helps them be calm and out of pain. It does not make them die sooner. There's a whole lot of research on this. I can send it to you if you're interested, but no, it does not make them die sooner. It helps them relax and it helps them be comfortable. Does that mean they might not be, that they may be unresponsive? They may be unresponsive, but you do not want them writhing in pain. I promise you don't. Because I've seen families who have said, absolutely not, we do not want to give. And then we're chasing pain of somebody who is dying. And you don't want to see that. You don't want to see it. With dementia, does a patient qualify for hospice even if we don't know how much longer they have to live? It depends on where they are in the disease. Many people will qualify in that mid stage when they start to lose weight. They start to have falls, where we've really turned the corner. Dementia, many times we talk about in 3 stages: early, moderate, and late. And so I encourage families, when they're firmly in that mid to mid late, to go ahead and do a referral and just see what they say. If one with dementia is miserable and wants to die, do regular meds for heart, blood pressure, etc. have to be continued? No, they do not. You can stop that. I've had people stop pacemakers and stop defibrillators because you can, because that's not the natural process of the disease. We implanted that. And many times we'll turn off the pacemaker and they continue to live because the pacemaker is not keeping them alive, shocking the heart, but that's not keeping them alive. So you can discontinue meds. Yes, you can. Medical power of attorney. That's why we got to have all that stuff in. We've got to have all that stuff done. Let's see, continue there. Somebody had already asked about Parkinson's, continuing medications. Yes. Will slides be available? Yes. Gwen, I think that Marty already put them up, but you've got my email also. You can email me. Did you say a
I'll put
patient can go on hospice and continue dialysis? Those agencies are hard to find, are they not? And again, that's where you want to ask a whole lot of these questions when you call and you are doing that, like you're shopping around to find the one that you want. And I think there's actually some over in chat I might have seen.
The recording, I answered about the recording. It should be up in 2 to 3 days.
And yes, slides available. Very good. Thank you for all the fantastic, wonderful things that you're saying. That is very nice. And did I miss any, Marty? I'm looking back again. Powers of attorney, advanced directives. I think somebody even put a link in there. Somebody asked what illnesses qualify for hospice, but we did answer that. That was on those last few slides. Somebody else asked the same thing. Radiation for pain relief. That's going to be on a case by case. They're going to look at it on case by case. Things that they are using for comfort measures, many times they can continue to do. Because I've also been told, but this company wouldn't allow them to continue with a therapy of some type. You also have to make sure that that therapy company is coding it in a particular way so that it's not curative, it's comfort measure. Yes, cultural differences. And then someone said, sounds expensive. It is not expensive because it is covered. Thank goodness it's covered, because we all are eventually going to need it. Wow. 3 minutes to spare. We did it,
and we've already gone through the CEU stuff.
We've gone.
My goodness.
I am going to just for a minute, I'm going to do a little commercial about the one coming up about holidays and dementia. We're actually doing it here tomorrow for our Lunch and Learn. So if you're interested and want to watch it this year, you can reach out. You can go on the James L. West site, jameslwest.org. We're doing it tomorrow. But like Marty said, the one from last year is out there. We talk a lot about this year's going to be different from last year, no matter where you are in the disease. Whether you're early, mid, late, or your loved one has passed, whether you're new to the field, it's going to be different than it was last year, because our client, our loved one, our resident, our patient is in a different place this year than they were last year. We also give gift ideas for the person with dementia and for caregivers. And then we also do some great stories about what's it really all about anyway.
It really is exceptional. The holiday one is exceptional and well worth it. I mean, like you said, the ideas for toys, for gifts. I mean, it's really exceptional.
It has grown over it started as a 30-minute program.
Yeah, it is really exceptional. One of the things that I want to make a point of that we have coming up, we've got a new attorney that's going to be doing a series with us on all the different paperwork or documents you need to have, and going in depth in that in them. And we've got an attorney webinar on the 19th of this month, overview and ethics of advanced directives.
Good.
And I highly encourage you to, she's going to start going over each one of them over the next few months as a series for us.
Very good.
So we're looking forward to that. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
We're out of time.
We're out of time. Well, we appreciate everything. Holly, as always, exceptional job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks,
You-
everybody.
You all, thank you for joining us, and look out for the follow-up email that will be going out tomorrow. And you all have a wonderful, safe day.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.